Okay, so I didn't change anything, but it's working now. If you've imported core data, I don't know why it's working now and it didn't.
Can I ask you a question?
Please ask plenty.
Can you go back to
The data model.
better style or yeah? So like the arrows are going from like when it goes from comment and it goes post to comments. Is it specifically saying like post to comment or if the arrows? I'm confused.
Yes. So think of it as literally drawing the lines between the relationships. So I could, nope, spread this out. Whatever relationships I set between the objects, it's saying if I've got a user and they have posts, that's going to relate as a one-to-many to an object called a post. If this wasn't in inverse relationship, I would only see the arrows from user to post. But it's also pretty important in that it's specifically telling me what property on a user relates to that post. So there's a line from user.posts to a post object. Because there's an inverse relationship, there's also a line from post.users to the user at that post attribute. So it's telling you both the relationship and also, let's look here. This is only unidirectional, sorry. So user has comments which relate specifically to this thing called comment. But comment doesn't have any user relationship, no inverse relationship. So this arrow doesn't necessarily need to be to a specific attribute on comment because there's no reciprocal relationship between those two types. There's just from user to comment and not the reverse. Correct. They do. So from post to user, don't look at the arrow pointing at post, but look at the arrow pointing at user. Correct. So post only has one user. This could be renamed because it was a too many, but now it's just the post has one user. Depends what the purpose of our app is. Say I can create a post. I was loving that song. So say I can create a post, and only I can create a post. That should be a one-to-many relationship. I should be able to have many posts, but a post should only have one user. But like we were saying before, say we worked in publishing or media, multiple users can work on a single post, but also one user could have many posts. So a post could have many users, a user could have many posts. It's all a matter of the design of what you're trying to model. Sunny. Didn't wanna. Yeah. Totally could. So again, that's a design question is would you do it? Why would you do it? Sunny, why would you have wanted to do that? Why would you have wanted to do that? So we do actually have that. That's right. So if I had a comment and I wanted to see which user made that comment. All right. Now we will do Liana's favorite thing where we create a manager with a singleton on it in just a bit. First, I just want to show you if you import core data. So in my view controller here, I've imported core data. If I import core data, then I should be able to create an instance of whatever types I've defined in core data. If I look at it, there's an initializer for something called an NS managed object. So when I create an object using something I defined in core data, that thing is a subclass of this thing called NS managed object, which is a managed object subclass. It initializes that and inserts it into the specified managed object context. I don't know. What did I do to make it work? Well, I needed to import core data, but then otherwise, yeah, I just threw my fingers at it and hope it worked. Just to show you how it works. Say that again? Didn't change anything. Just started. I want to build it. Whatever. Okay. There are a bunch of initializers on this guy. I can create a user using an empty initializer, but I can also create it so that it enters a specific NS managed object context, so that it enters our usable core data objects in the context that we have here. How are we going to get that context? Where does that exist? Where did we see our core data persistent container, for example, get defined? Yeah, when the app loaded. So from the app delegate, we can go and get the persistent container, and from that container, we can go and we can get that context. How do we get that? Do something like look at UI application, the centralized point of control and coordination for apps running in iOS. Great. That has on it a singleton called shared, and that specific shared, so that application, remember this is just delegation. App delegate is just a delegate for our app. It handles certain things for our app. That's at a high level. That's great. Now on there, and I know you all love this, as app delegate, here I'm going to look for the persistent container. Pretty good, right? Do you love it? All right. And now I'm just going to look for the property called view context, which is the managed object context associated with the main queue. Contains a reference to the managed object context that is created and owned by the persistent container, which is associated with the main queue of the application. So this is all happening on the main thread. Remember how we said you could run into some race conditions issues with concurrency? That's because you have to be using core data on the main thread. That's how we got the context in which this user is going to be initialized. I know. I bet you don't. This is me cheating. What I should probably do is your favorite thing. No, that is your favorite thing. Really good point. What else do you like to do, Liana? Yeah, let's put it in a different file and define all this stuff in one location so that it's modular and we don't have to worry about it. So let's think about our old persistence helper. What do we like to do with persistence helper? We can make it generic. We actually don't have to do that here because we can treat this like a cross between our persistence helper and an API client. So think of this like, let's create all the functions here for retrieving info from core data. We could definitely make it generic. What data do I want to retrieve? I get my users. I want to create users. I want to get posts. I want to create posts. I want to get comments and create comments. But here's the nice thing about core data. And this is what we were talking about before with the difference between core data and using a plist. I don't have to set up a function where I get a user's posts. Because if I'm looking at one specific user, let's say here I've got this user, I can just go and say user.posts. Sam. So it's a really good distinction to draw here. It's not actually deprecated, but it's in less use because there are better tools coming from like third-party frameworks. So there are whole services, like the one I mentioned before is called Realm, where this style, the way that this works was created like in iOS 1. And so it has to be backwards compatible with all that stuff. But now there are new and like improved and more elegant solutions to this exact kind of thing. I would say use this every time, yeah. Phoenix. I would not expect the core of this to change because it has to be backwards compatible, I think to like iOS 8 or 9. So the way it works for that has to work for the way it's going to work in the future until they say like your phones can't even run iOS 7 anymore or something like that. So it has to work across a variety of versions. So it has to work in the old way or in the current way or in the future way. Sunny. See. Nope. Literally no. I really did not click anything. Like, I just closed it out and reopened it. Yeah. Yep. Sorry, friend. Let's look at user as a type, though. It created for me a file. It said this file was automatically generated and should not be edited. This is the definition for that core data user object. It's an NS managed object. We actually don't see any of the properties on there because it gets all of that from the managed object context. So it goes, it looks for the definition of that stuff. Wherever that persistence container loads it out by going to the app delegate, looking at that specific property called persistence container, creating a new instance of it using the string that matches the data model file I've set up here. I know, it's really fun. Then if I click into it, I start to see more stuff. They create an empty definition for user. So let's go back and look at that. They create an empty definition for user. And then the rest of the information about that user is set up as extensions to that user. This file was automatically generated and should not be edited. I would take that advice. If you need to update your user, do it from that data model file everything else, look at all this built-in stuff we have. User has a string, user has an NS set of comments, user has posts, which are an NS set as well. Interesting. What is an NS set? Such a good question. It's a group of unique objects that is Objective-C compatible. And if we are dealing with those, and it's created in our Xcode data model, we can safely assume that we can force the downcast to make it posts. So if we've set up a relationship in the data model where user has posts and posts is defined in there as well, then we can literally downcast it and then hit it with a bang, say like, it must be of this type, and you'll have posts there. You can count on that. All this stuff is generated for you. The post, oh man, there's an empty class. I bet it's got love my parens. The first post has some properties as well. It's got a body. All those properties are on an extension of a type called post. All this stuff gets created the same way as before. So if I have post, I can add 2 comments. So I can add a comment just because of the way that relationship is set up. So I'm really warm. I'm gonna build out this core data manager for this app. You don't have to stick around. It's really gross in here. What are some questions you have before that happens? Phoenix. Probably not from the ground up, but I'm gonna try to create like a small one for Thursday. And I want to use core data in the Reddit app a tiny bit tomorrow, just to see how we toggle between online and offline stuff. Sunny? Yeah. Yep. So this is one post, and I just wanted to show that it has this function, this method on it called add to comments. Probably never. Or you wouldn't be dynamically creating it from your app. The reason we used it is because you didn't have to know all this database stuff. You didn't have to know about relating objects. Honestly, without Firebase, I think this is like, without learning a little bit from Firebase about like collections before this, I feel like this is gobbledygook as opposed to just saving arrays using persistence in a plist. You might use a plist to save keys and values that you need for like the runtime of your app, but that's when you get to like a much more complex and like more widely distributed thing. So like, let's say, and if you don't like this example, push it out of your head immediately. But let's say your app loads a whole bunch of settings from its server that it wants to have available to it when it opens the next time. So like, when you load the app and you have just an array of information, there's like a, let's say you have a preferred animal, and you want that animal to load each time you load that app. It could be in user defaults, but say you've got 30 keys and values there. You might just save all that stuff as one plist that gets loaded at the beginning, at the launch of the app. And then you load out that information. But again, that's like at a much more complex, like more scaled app level. Otherwise, the only plists we deal with are info.plist and Google blah, blah, blah plist. You do that so just in case you couldn't get internet connection or something like that, but you need to be dynamically like changing things in the app, you just save that locally rather than creating some instance of some object. Correct. What? This would not replace it, especially because like now we're starting to actually persist models as opposed to user defaults as like a setting.
This is how you get an app fucking offline and you're still saving data or writing code or something like that. It's not.
Yep. So natively, like this is the solution to saving things offline. There are third-party frameworks that are somewhat better, but
Realm something you would recommend.
yes. Realm. Actually, I think Realm is old. Realm. What is Realm? Realm is a mobile database. Great. Oh wow. It's a pod. No way. Realm Swift allows you to efficiently write your app's model layer in a safe, okay, got it, persistent and fast way. So I've just got a thing called Realm, one object there, kind of like Firebase, right? Just trust Realm to do what Realm does, and let Realm look in its objects for something of the type dog, filter that stuff out. This is much cleaner and easier to use than core data. But, you know, core data has been around forever, and so it is definitely still in use by a lot of people. Not everyone uses frameworks as much as we do, because if you have a product that has 1 million users and you built it using something that's old, your best hope might be just to improve that old thing rather than moving everything over to a new thing. Yay, apps!